The wagon rattled over the dry Texas dirt, a child's silence buried beneath the groaning wheels. 3-year-old Mercy pressed her head against a splintered board, her small body tucked between sacks of flour and cracked hopes. Her corn-husk doll, missing its eyes, was the only soul in that wagon who listened. Thomas Brennan spat his words like venom. She eats more than 3 men combined. Mercy didn't flinch. She'd learned that moving drew fire. So she stayed still, small, forgettable, like a whisper lost in prairie wind. Through a slit in the canvas, she watched children outside chasing butterflies, their laughter bouncing off wagon wheels like music. None of them looked over at her. None ever did. Later, at a creek glittering like broken glass, Thomas tossed her bundle onto the sand, an extra dress, a wrapped biscuit, her bird. "Follow the creek north," he said, already turning away. "Hendersons'll take you in." Her mother, face pale as milk, voice trembling, didn't argue. "They'll treat you good," she whispered, "better than we can." Then the wagon pulled away. No final hug, no backward glance, just creaking wheels fading into the hills and a little girl too stunned to cry. But the tears came anyway, eventually. When the dust cleared and silence fell like dusk, Mercy whispered to her wooden bird, "Papa, I promise I'll be so good next time. Please make them come back." They didn't. And so began Mercy Whitman's story, not with a rescue, but with abandonment. Not with hope, but with a lie. That she was too heavy to love. Mercy didn't know how far north was. She just knew the sun rose one way and set the other, and that her bare feet ached after every step. The creek whispered beside her like it had secrets, but none of them were about love. She drank from it, washed in it, talked to it. After a day, it became her only friend. The first night she curled beneath a tree with bark like cracked leather and stared at the stars her papa once named. "That one's the North Star," he'd said. "If you're ever lost, it'll lead you home." But what if home had no one waiting? What if it never existed at all? On the second day, she chased a rabbit, hoping it might lead her somewhere safe, but it vanished into brush she couldn't crawl through. Her legs, bruised and bleeding, gave out before noon. She sat by the water, rocking herself and whispering, "I can do better. I can eat less. I won't cry, I promise." But when night came again, and coyotes howled in the distance like ghosts calling names, her bravery cracked. She sobbed until her throat burned and her lips split. No one came. By the third day, her thoughts turned slow and foggy, like soup left too long over a fire. Hunger became a scream in her belly. She found berries, then vomited them. Her hands shook when she tried to stand, so she crawled, dragging her bundle like an anchor. The bird her father's carving stayed clutched to her chest. It was the last thing that felt like love. On the fourth day, she reached for more berries beneath a thorn bush and heard it, a rattle, low, warning, alive. The snake's body coiled, thick and silent, its eyes locked onto hers. Mercy froze. Her papa once said, "Fear will lie to you, but your body won't. Listen to it." So she didn't scream, didn't run, just waited. The rattlesnake uncoiled slowly and slid away into the tall grass. When it was gone, she collapsed backward, breath hitching in her chest. Her whole body trembled. "Papa," she whispered, "I don't think I can do this anymore." And then came the vultures. 3 of them at first, circling overhead like slow black prayers. Mercy lay back against the earth and thought, maybe they're right, maybe I'm done. She let go of the wooden bird. It bounced once, then rolled and slipped into the creek. Mercy scrambled, coughing and weak, Crawling after it like it was her heartbeat, she reached for it and missed. The water caught it and carried it away. Gone. That was when she broke. No sound, no scream, just her small body curling beside the water, like something the earth had already claimed. The sun dipped low, dragging long shadows across the prairie, but Mercy stayed still. Her dress clung to her like damp paper. Her limbs, scraped raw, trembled with fever. If death was coming, she was ready to let it arrive quietly. But death didn't come. Something else did. A shadow moved behind the rocks, silent. Careful. Wild. Not an animal too still. Too deliberate. It crouched, then stepped into the dimming light. He was tall, lean, with hair like nightfall braided down his back and eyes like flint. A Comanche hunter, bow slung across his shoulder, gaze sharp as a blade. His name was Swift Arrow, though she wouldn't know that for hours yet. He didn't speak at first, just knelt, watched. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Her skin burned red, glistened with sickness. She looked like a bird fallen from its nest, broken, fragile, but still alive. Among the Comanche, a child, any child, was a sacred flame, not to be left to die alone. He touched her forehead. Heat pulsed through her skin like a warning. Fever, dehydration, near death. And still, she opened her eyes. "Are you real?" she asked, her voice brittle as dry grass. "Or a dream?" "I am real," he answered softly, in the halting English he'd learned from missionaries. "Who are you?" "Mercy," she said, like it didn't matter. Like even her name was someone else's mistake. Swift Arrow studied her. Her body was failing, but her spirit hadn't given up, not entirely. There was still a fight in her voice, even if it was whisper thin. "Where is your family?" he asked. "They left me," she said. "Said I was slowing them down. Step-papa said I eat too much. Mama said the Hendersons would take me." He didn't respond, didn't nod or gasp or curse. But inside, a quiet fire lit. Among his people, no man, no matter how desperate, would abandon a child to die alone. He gave her water from his pouch. She sipped like a newborn. Then he gathered her in his arms, surprised by how little she weighed. She barely filled his chest. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "Aren't I just a burden?" Swift Arrow looked at her for a long time, then said, "Sometimes the spirits send us what we need, even if we don't yet know why." For 3 days she drifted between sleep and fever, tucked in a buffalo hide tent that smelled of sage, smoke, and healing. Bright Moon, the medicine woman, tended her gently, placing cool cloths on her head, murmuring in Comanche, feeding her broth spiced with herbs she couldn't name. When Mercy woke fully, her first word was bird. Swift Arrow handed it to her, damp and worn, but whole. "Creek gave it back," he said. "Maybe it missed you." She clutched it to her chest and cried. Not from pain, not from hunger, but from the unbearable shock of being wanted. In the Comanche camp, no one called her a burden. No one counted her bites or scolded her for slowing down. The children laughed when she joined their games. The women braided her hair with feathers. The men nodded when she passed. Swift Arrow especially never hovered, never pushed, but he always noticed. "You are stronger now," Bright Moon told her one morning, "but not just here." She tapped Mercy's arm. "Here." She placed a hand over Mercy's chest. Still, fear clung to her ribs like a second skin. "What if they come back?" she asked one night, huddled by the fire. "What if they take me again?" Swift Arrow didn't answer with words. Instead, he taught her to disappear. They rose before dawn. He led her into the prairie and pointed to the hawk circling above. "He sees us now. But watch. Then he vanished. One moment, he stood beside her. The next, gone. A trick of light and movement, like mist fading into grass. He called to her from the brush. Now your turn. She tried, crawled low, slipped behind rocks, failed, tried again. You already know how to hide, he told her. You did it every day in that wagon. Now learn to choose when to be seen. She practiced until her breath came steady, and the grass stopped shivering at her touch. Days passed, then weeks. He taught her to walk without leaving tracks, to read the sky, to find food and water in a world that offered no mercy unless you knew where to look. But more than that, he taught her to speak. What would you have said to your mother if she had listened? I would have told her I was scared. And your stepfather? That I didn't ask to be born just to be left behind. Swift Arrow nodded, his voice soft as wind. Then say those words now. Let them out. So she did. And when she did, the tightness in her chest loosened not all at once, but enough to let the air in again. The peace shattered on a cold morning, when Mercy was gathering berries near the edge of camp. A low tremble passed through the earth, not thunder, but hooves. Swift Arrow appeared in an instant, his expression sharp. "Soldiers," he said. In minutes, chaos rolled across the village. Women called for children. Warriors grabbed spears and rifles. Dogs barked. Horses reared. Mercy's heart pounded like a war drum. And then she saw him, not just soldiers, not strangers, Thomas. He rode beside the Texas Rangers, pointing directly at her. "There! That's her! The white girl they stole!" Mercy froze. The Comanche braced for violence. Chief Running Bear stood tall in his eagle feather headdress, his English perfect and firm. "You may water your horses, Captain Morrison, but you do not give orders here." The captain, older than most, raised a hand. "We're here for the girl," he said. "No one else." Mercy stepped forward, voice small but clear. "I'm Mercy Whitman." Thomas's face twisted into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're coming home, sweetheart. We've all been worried sick." She stared at him. "Where's Mama?" He faltered. "She took ill. Fever. Didn't make it. That's why I came back. Family sticks together." But his eyes slid away from hers. His hands fidgeted, and Mercy remembered what Swift Arrow had taught her: how to read tracks, how to read lies. "You're lying," she said. The words dropped like stones into the hush. "You left me. You said I was too much trouble. You told Mama she had to choose." Captain Morrison squinted at her, something shifting in his gaze. "Explain," he said. Mercy inhaled. The camp stood behind her, Thomas's face twisted in front of her. And all around, rifles were ready, so she told the truth in full. She told them about the hardtack, the creek, the fever, the days alone, the bird in the water, the hands that saved her. And when she finished, Thomas laughed, but no one else did. Captain Morrison's face didn't move, but his silence carried weight, the kind that made soldiers lower their rifles without being told. Thomas tried again. "She's just confused. These savages filled her head with lies. She's a white child, for God's sake." But the captain was watching him now, really watching. "You said you were attacked near Eagle Pass," Morrison said quietly. Thomas blinked. "Yes, that's where they took her." The captain glanced at his sergeant, a small shake of the head. "Funny. No Comanche raids near Eagle Pass in over 2 years. No missing child reports. No signs of violence." Thomas stammered. That don't mean anything?" "It means everything," Morrison snapped. Then came Swift Arrow's voice, calm but sharp as flint. "What kind of man abandons a child and then dares to speak of law?" Thomas reached for his reins, maybe to flee, maybe to fight, but Morrison beat him to it. "Mr. Brennan," he said, "you are under arrest, child abandonment, filing false reports, possibly worse." Thomas's face turned the color of wet ash. "She's just a half-dead brat. Nobody'll miss her." But even as the sergeant moved to cuff him, everyone knew he'd already lost. His words confirmed what Mercy had lived. When the dust settled and the tension broke like a fever, Morrison turned to her. "You can't stay here," he said, softer now. "It's not permitted. The government will place you with a proper home." Mercy looked around. At the camp? At Swift Arrow? At Bright Moon? At the fire where she had first tasted warmth, not just heat? And then, quietly, she asked, "What if I told you I already found one?" They didn't force her that day. Instead, they sent her east to the Henderson family, like Thomas once said. A tidy white farmhouse, a proper bed, church on Sundays, biscuits on the stove, the kind of life people said she should want. And for a time she tried. She folded her hands at the dinner table. She smiled when neighbors patted her head and said, "Lucky girl, saved just in time." She said, "Yes, ma'am," and "No, sir," and let them believe she'd been rescued from something unclean. But in the silence of her room, she whispered prayers that weren't taught by the preacher prayers Bright Moon had once shown her beneath the stars. Her hands remembered how to shape dough, but her heart remembered the beat of the Comanche drums. Each week, she disappeared a little more, until one night, snow falling like ashes on the roof, she heard it the soft creak of a saddle in the dark. She crept to her window and saw him at the tree line, still as stone, Swift Arrow, watching. He raised one hand, not a wave, just a sign. "I see you," she pressed her palm to the glass. "I remember." He vanished into the shadows before dawn, but that moment stayed lit inside her like an ember. The next morning she left a letter on her pillow, packed the wooden bird, the medicine bundle, 3 pieces of hardtack, not for survival but remembrance. And she walked. Through snow, through silence, through every doubt that tried to turn her around. She followed no map but memory, no compass but belonging. By midday, she saw smoke curling above the hills, heard laughter like wind in tall grass, smelled sage and buffalo. And then she saw them, the circle of teepees, the children running, the fire at the center, and him, Swift Arrow, waiting. She didn't speak, she didn't need to. When she ran into the camp, Bright Moon cried out and pulled her close. "I came home," Mercy whispered, and this time no one made her leave. The fire crackled in the heart of the camp, warm light dancing across Mercy's face as the tribe gathered close. The stars above shimmered in silence, listening as she told them everything. About the snow-covered church pews and the kind smiles that felt like questions. About the sweet bread and polite dinners. About Mrs. Henderson's careful affection and Mr. Henderson's bedtime stories. "They were good to me," she said, staring into the flames, "but good to me and good for me weren't the same." No one interrupted, no one judged. They simply listened, the way only those who've survived loss know how to do. When she finished, Chief Running Bear leaned forward. His voice was weathered bark and morning frost. "And what are you now, Mercy? Who have you become?" She touched the wooden bird at her neck, the one her papa carved before sickness took him. She looked at Bright Moon, at Swift Arrow, at the children with whom she now ran wild and free. "I am someone who chooses," she said. "Someone who belongs, not because I was claimed, but because I claimed myself." The chief nodded once. "Then you are one of us." That night, she lay in the tipi beneath hides, painted with stories not just of war or hunts, but of rebirth. She slept without fear. And when she woke the next morning, the world was new. The cold bit at her cheeks as she stepped outside, but it didn't hurt. The prairie stretched endless, yes, but no longer empty. Swift Arrow met her near the corral, holding two bows. "Time to learn to hunt," he said. She blinked. "I don't know how." He handed her one. "You didn't know how to survive either, but you did." They walked together into the open field, her feet steady, her back straight. No longer trying to disappear. Now, learning to stand. In the days that followed, Mercy learned more than she ever had in any farmhouse or church bench. She learned how to track elk by the shape of their hooves, and how to feel the coming of rain in the way the wind changed scent. She learned which roots healed and which poisoned, how to scrape hides clean, how to sit so still even birds forgot she was there. But more than anything, she learned how to exist without apology. Bright Moon braided her hair with river stones and feathers, not to tame her, but to decorate her. "Your thoughts," she told Mercy, "are part of the sky now. Let them fly." At night they sang around the fire, not hymns from books, but songs made from memory, songs of wind and thunder and mothers who loved without needing words. Mercy's voice, once afraid to rise, began to hum quietly beneath the others, then louder. And when children fought or fell or cried, no one said, "Stop that." They were comforted, not corrected, held, not hurried. One afternoon, while grinding corn beside the other women, Mercy asked, "What if I still remember what he said, Thomas? What if I still feel like too much trouble?" Bright Moon didn't answer right away. She kept working, the stone turning steady in her hands. Then she said, "Feelings are guests. They arrive, they leave, but they don't build the house. You do." Mercy carried that with her like armor. Weeks passed, the wind softened. The trees budded green. One evening, a rider approached the camp alone. It was Captain Morrison. He came not with soldiers, but with silence and tired eyes. They spoke in the center of the village, Swift Arrow watching from a distance, arms folded. "I came to see if you're well," the captain said. "That's all." Mercy looked him in the eye. "I am." He nodded, and after a long pause asked, "What name do you go by now?" She smiled, slow, certain, and said, "Still Mercy, but not the same girl." He tipped his hat and rode away. Spring ripened into summer, and the girl who once believed herself forgotten became a voice among the circle, not out of pity, but place. She told stories around the fire, not only of her past, but of her dreams. She taught the Comanche children games she remembered from long ago, mixing them with the games she now played barefoot in the grass. They called her Little Bird, not because she was small, but because she'd flown far and found her way back. Sometimes in the quiet of early morning, she sat with Swift Arrow and watched the sun spill across the hills. He'd point to the ridge. "There," he'd say, "your old world waits, a place of wagons and fences and names that don't fit." She'd nod. "I remember it, but I don't belong there anymore." One day, as the tribe prepared to move for the season, Mercy helped pack the camp. She folded hides, she counted children, she tied bundles tight, and when a new child cried because she couldn't find her mother, Mercy knelt and took her hand. "You're not alone," she whispered. "Not anymore." That night, Chief Running Bear summoned her. He stood beside the fire, cloaked in silence, then spoke for all to hear. "You were not born among us," he said, "but the Spirit sent you with purpose. You walked through fire and shadow, and you returned not with anger, but with light." Then he handed her a stone, carved with the tribe's symbol for rebirth, a spiral nested in a circle. "You are no longer guest, you are family." Mercy held the stone in both hands. It felt warm, even in the cold wind. That night, beneath 1,000 stars, she buried the last piece of hardtack she'd carried since the day she was left behind. Not to forget, but to mark the end of the road. From that ground, something new would grow. On the Texas frontier, stories are often carved from violence, survival, and dust. But Mercy's story was carved from something quieter, something nearly invisible to those who never had to earn their right to exist. It began with silence, with hiding, with shrinking herself to fit a world that never left room for children who needed too much. She was told she was too heavy, too hungry, too slow, too loud when she cried, too quiet when she hurt. She was not left behind because she failed. She was left because others failed to see her worth. But worth is not given, it is claimed. And Mercy, a girl once abandoned beside a creek with nothing but a carved bird, claimed hers not by begging, but by becoming. She learned that love wasn't always loud. Sometimes it came in the form of warm broth, of braided feathers, of quiet hands that never asked her to disappear. She learned that strength wasn't measured in footsteps or silence, but in the courage to speak truth even when her voice trembled. And she learned, most of all, that being chosen means little when it depends on being perfect. But choosing herself, that changed everything. Mercy never saw herself as brave. For most of her young life, she had simply tried to survive, to remain small enough to not be a burden, silent enough to not be cast out again. But somewhere between the sound of a distant creek and the steady beat of Swift Arrow's heart, as he carried her through that first winter, she had begun to believe in her own worth. Years later, others would speak of her with reverence. They would say the girl who once cried alone by a dying fire had grown into a woman who healed what two worlds had broken. She taught children born of settlers and Comanche alike. She cooked stew from both traditions and told stories in both tongues. She braided her hair like her mother once did, but wore beads Running Elk gifted her, polished from river stones. When strangers asked who she belonged to, she would smile gently and say, "To the ones who stayed." But Mercy never forgot what it felt like to be left behind. So she never left anyone behind, not the quiet boy with a crooked leg, not the runaway girl hiding behind a barn, not even the woman who once said she was cursed. And that became her true gift. Not survival, not endurance, but the choice to see others not as burdens, but as beginnings. Because the world had once told her she wasn't worth saving. And one man, a Comanche with eyes like the horizon, proved the world wrong. And from that moment on, Mercy lived her life doing the same for others.